Welcome to Romance Tales by Mandy. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Now, sit back, relax, and let's begin.
There's a moment in life when desperation meets opportunity. When the universe, in all its chaotic unpredictability, throws you a lifeline just as you're about to sink. That's exactly what happened to me. I was down to my last few dollars, staring at eviction notices as if willing them to disappear. Job after job had slipped through my fingers, and with each rejection, the walls around me seemed to close in a little tighter. But then I saw it, a job listing that felt too good to be true. Live-in nanny needed for a 6-year-old boy. Discretion and professionalism required. Generous salary. I hesitated. Positions like this didn't just appear for people like me, but I had no choice. I sent my application, convinced it would vanish into the void like all the others. Except this time, someone responded. The Calloway estate was nothing short of a fortress. Tall iron gates, sleek black cars, and a staff that moved with the precision of a well-oiled machine. And at the center of it all was him, Dominic Calloway, CEO, Billionaire, a man who looked like he belonged on the cover of Forbes rather than in an interview for his child's nanny. His suit was impeccable, his jaw sharp enough to cut glass. But it was his eyes that truly unsettled me, blue, piercing, and ice cold. He barely glanced at me as he skimmed my resume, his fingers tapping an impatient rhythm against his desk.
You have experience with children?
His voice was smooth but detached, as if he were negotiating a deal rather than hiring someone to care for his son. Yes, I answered quickly. I love working with kids. He didn't react, just nodded once, barely acknowledging me before pressing a button on his desk. The door behind me creaked open, and a small figure stepped inside. Liam, dark-haired, wide-eyed, and quiet. He clutched the edge of his sweater like it was a lifeline, staring at me as if I were some foreign creature he wasn't sure he wanted to approach.
This is my son. He doesn't warm up to people easily,
Dominic said. I knelt, offering Liam a small smile. Hi, Liam. It's nice to meet you. His lips parted slightly, but he didn't speak. Instead, his gaze flickered to his father, seeking permission, guidance, something. But Dominic didn't offer it. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just a job. This was a battlefield. And Dominic Calloway, he was going to be the hardest opponent I'd ever faced.
Distractions are dangerous. I built my empire on discipline, on shutting out anything that didn't serve a purpose. Emotions? Useless. Attachments? Weakness. The world doesn't reward men who hesitate. It respects those who control, those who conquer. And I have never lost control. Until her. Sophie Bennett. She was supposed to be another employee. Another name on a contract. Another piece in the machine that kept my life running with ruthless efficiency. She was hired to care for Liam, to provide what I, admittedly, could not. That was all. But from the moment she walked into my office, something felt off. She wasn't like the others. The nannies before her had been polished, careful, distant. Sophie? She was warmth wrapped in defiance. Green eyes too sharp, too knowing. Lips that pressed together whenever I spoke, as if she had to physically stop herself from saying something she shouldn't. She made me aware of her. And I hated that. I told myself it was irritation. The way she moved through my house, too at ease in a place where people only spoke when spoken to. The way Liam, my son, the boy who barely acknowledged anyone, had already started looking at her like she held the sun in her hands. It was disruptive. Unacceptable. So I did what I always do. I ignored it. I focused on what mattered: meetings, acquisitions, strategies. Sophie Bennett was an employee, nothing more. And yet, I caught myself noticing things. The way her laughter echoed down the halls, a sound so foreign in this house that it stopped me in my tracks. The way she spoke to Liam, not with forced politeness but with something real. Something I didn't recognize. The way my name sounded in her mouth the one time she dared to say it. I should fire her. I should. Because whatever this is, it's a distraction. and distractions are dangerous.
Liam Calloway was a quiet storm, not the kind that arrived with thunder and lightning, demanding to be seen. No, he was the kind that lingered, unnoticed at first, until you realized the air around you had shifted. That silence wasn't just silence, but something deeper, a weight pressing against your chest. The first few days at the Calloway estate, he barely spoke to me. He watched, though, from doorways, from the edge of the room, from behind his father's towering shadow. I'd catch glimpses of dark hair and wide, curious eyes before he'd disappear again, retreating into himself like a secret no one had been allowed to read. But I wasn't going to give up, so I started small. I'd hum while I folded his clothes, hoping he'd wander close enough to recognize the tune. I'd set his plate next to mine at dinner, even when he sat far across the table. And I'd leave books out in the library, ones about adventure and magic, just to see if he'd take the bait. Then one day he did. It was after lunch. I was sitting on the floor in the playroom, flipping through a picture book when I heard it, soft, hesitant footsteps behind me. I didn't turn. I didn't speak. I just kept reading, my voice steady, even as my pulse quickened. Then a small weight settled beside me. Liam. He didn't say anything at first, just sat there, his shoulder barely brushing mine, his presence fragile as glass. But then, after a long stretch of silence, he pointed to a page.
"This one,"
he murmured. His voice was so quiet, I almost thought I imagined it. But I didn't. And just like that, the walls he'd built around himself cracked, just a little, just enough to let me in. Day by day, he opened up. A soft smile here, a tug on my sleeve there. By the end of the week, he was asking me to tuck him in. By the end of the month, he was reaching for my hand without hesitation. And then there was Dominic, always watching, always silent. There was something unreadable in his expression whenever he saw Liam with me, as if he were witnessing something he couldn't quite understand, something that unsettled him. And the strangest part, I wasn't sure he wanted to stop it.
I built walls for a reason. Solid, unshakable, impenetrable. And yet, somehow Sophie Bennett was slipping through the cracks. It started subtly. A glance that lasted too long. A laugh that lingered in my ears. A shift in the air whenever she was near. I told myself it was nothing. A momentary lapse. A simple distraction that would ignore. But distractions don't make your pulse quicken. They don't make you notice things you shouldn't. The way she tucks her hair behind her ear when she's thinking. The way she softens when she looks at Liam like he's the most important thing in the world. The way her lips curve, not just when she's happy but when she's amused, when she's teasing, when she's daring me to react. I don't react. I can't. She works for me. She is here for Liam. Whatever this thing is, it has no place in my life. So I do what I've always done. I shut it down. I avoid her. I keep conversations brief, professional. I make sure we're never alone in the same room for too long. If she notices, she doesn't say anything. She just keeps being her. Warm. Effortless. Completely unaware that every time she smiles, my grip on my own control slips. And then one evening I find myself standing outside Liam's room. The door is cracked open and inside she's reading to him. Her voice is soft, soothing, weaving a story that has him clinging to every word. He's curled against her like he belongs there. Like she belongs there. Something twists in my chest. I tell myself it's nothing. I tell myself to walk away. But for the first time in years, I'm not sure if I can.
It's nothing. That's what I tell myself every time my stomach tightens when he walks into the room. Every time I catch my breath when his eyes lock onto mine, cool and unreadable. Every time his voice, deep and controlled, sends a shiver down my spine. It's nothing. He is my boss. And yet, the tension between us hums like a wire pulled too tight. It wasn't like this at first. In the beginning, he barely acknowledged me beyond what was necessary. But now I feel him, even when he isn't looking at me. a presence that lingers, that unsettles me in ways I can't explain. I tell myself I'm imagining it, that it's one-sided, because Dominic Calloway doesn't smile. He doesn't soften, except when he looks at Liam. I see it in the rare moments when he thinks no one is watching, the ghost of something tender in his expression, a flicker of warmth that vanishes as quickly as it appears. And every time I wonder, will he ever look at me that way? I shouldn't want that. I shouldn't crave it. But then there are the moments when his guard slips, just for a second. The way his gaze lingers when I laugh. The way his jaw tightens when another man talks to me. The way his fingers brush mine when we reach for the same thing. And he pulls away like he's been burned. It's nothing. I repeat it like a mantra. But deep down, I know it's a lie.
The storm is relentless. Rain lashes against the glass, the wind howling through the trees like a living thing. Thunder cracks so loud it rattles the walls. I've never been one to care about storms. I barely register them. Their background noise insignificant. But tonight something feels different. I hear it before I see it. Liam's small feet racing down the hall. The faint hitch in his breath. He's afraid. I know that sound. But before I can step out of my office, he's already disappeared around the corner. He didn't come to me. A sharp pang hits my chest. Unexpected. Unwelcome. I follow. And that's when I find them. Sophie's door is slightly open, the warm glow of a lamp spilling into the dim hallway. Inside, Liam is curled up against her, his little fingers clinging to the fabric of her shirt. She's stroking his hair, whispering something soothing, her voice soft as silk. And then she hums. It's a tune I don't recognize, but the effect is instant. Liam relaxes. His breathing evens out. The fear that sent him running just minutes ago has vanished, replaced by something I haven't been able to give him. Comfort. I should walk away. I should turn around and pretend I never saw this. But I don't. I stand there, frozen in place, watching the way she holds him. The way she so effortlessly fills a void I hadn't even realized was there. The way she makes this house, this cold, lifeless mansion, feel like something it hasn't been in years. Like a home. And for the first time in a long time, I feel it. The chill inside me. The emptiness. And the terrifying realization that maybe I've been the one afraid all along.
It's just dinner. That's what I tell myself as I sit across from Dominic at the long, impossibly polished dining table. Liam had already been tucked into bed, leaving just the two of us in the dim glow of the chandelier. The air is thick, charged with something unspoken. I shouldn't be nervous. I shouldn't be aware of him like this. But I am. His sleeves are rolled up, the top button of his shirt undone. He looks different, less like the untouchable CEO and more like a man. A man who has been watching me all evening with an intensity that sets my skin on fire. We don't talk much. The clinking of silverware is the only sound between us. But it's not silence. Not really. It's something heavier, something weighted with every glance, every flicker of his eyes to my lips, every slow, measured breath he takes like he's keeping himself in check. And then it happens. I stand to clear my plate at the same time he does. We collide in the narrow space beside the table, the warmth of his body radiating into mine. My breath catches. So does his. I should step back. He should move first. Neither of us does. The tension snaps like a live wire. His hand moves, hesitant at first, then deliberate, fingertips grazing my jaw, tilting my face up to his. My heart pounds, a wild, frantic thing, but I don't pull away. I should. But then his lips brush mine, and the world tilts. It's not gentle. It's not careful. It's heat and restraint all tangled together, a battle between hesitation and hunger. His hand slides to my waist, pulling me closer, and for a single, reckless moment, I let myself sink into it, into him. And then, a sound, a sharp, distant knock against the front door. Reality crashes down. Dominic pulls away first, his breathing uneven, his eyes dark with something dangerous. Regret? Frustration? I don't know. All I know is that whatever just happened between us, it can never happen again.
A sharp knock on the door. I freeze. She does too.
Mr. Calloway?
It's James, my head of security. His voice is firm, urgent.
I need a moment. It's important.
Damn it. The second my lips leave hers, reality rushes back in. My company. My position. My rules. I take a step back, breath uneven, pulse hammering in a way that feels dangerously out of control. Sophie is still standing there, staring at me, her eyes wide, her lips slightly parted. I can still taste her. Still feel the warmth of her body close to mine. And for one reckless, impossible moment, I want to pull her back in. But I force myself to look away. Sophie, this was a mistake. I say, my voice colder than I intend. Silence. She doesn't speak. Doesn't move. And that makes it worse. I force myself to look at her again. I shouldn't have. Because the moment I do, I see it, the flicker of something fragile in her eyes. Something I've just crushed beneath the weight of my own restraint. I should explain. Apologize. Do something to fix the mess I just created. But I don't. Instead, I do what I do best. I retreat. I straighten my tie, shift my posture back into something detached, unreadable. The Dominic Calloway that built an empire. The one who doesn't make reckless, career-ending mistakes. The one who doesn't kiss his employees. Sophie, this was a mistake. I say again, carefully measured. Controlled. It won't happen again. Her lips press together and she nods once. No argument. No pleading. Just quiet acceptance. And for some reason that makes it worse. I turn sharply, heading for the door before I can see whatever expression she's wearing. Before I can change my mind. Before I can let myself admit what I already know. This was never just a mistake.
I was a fool for thinking that, for even a second, Dominic Calloway might have felt something real. That the way he looked at me meant something. That the way he kissed me, like he was losing himself, like I was the only thing keeping him grounded, was anything more than a lapse in judgment. He made that perfectly clear.
This was a mistake.
His words echo in my head, over and over, like a cruel melody I can't turn off. I should have known better. Men like him don't fall for women like me. I was naive to think otherwise. So I do the only thing I can. I bury it, shove every flicker of hope, every foolish, fleeting fantasy, deep down where it can't hurt me anymore. And I work. I wake up before sunrise, make sure Liam is ready for school, organize his meals, help him with his homework. I take him to the park, read him stories, tuck him in at night. I focus on him because he's the only one in this house who actually needs me. And I avoid Dominic. I time my movements around the mansion so we don't cross paths. I keep my head down when he's near. If we do have to interact, I keep my responses short, professional, detached, just like he wanted. But it doesn't stop the ache in my chest every time I hear his voice in the next room. It doesn't stop the heat that crawls up my spine when I catch his scent in the hall. Clean, crisp, with a hint of something dark underneath. It doesn't stop the sting when I catch him looking at me, like I'm nothing more than a passing thought. Like that night never happened. And maybe to him it didn't. But to me, it was the moment I realized just how badly I could break. It starts with a phone call, one I should have ignored, one I wish I had ignored. But when my phone vibrates on the nightstand and I see the number flashing across the screen, one I haven't seen in years, my stomach knots and my fingers move on their own. Hello. Silence. Then, a voice I prayed I'd never hear again.
Well, well, Sophie Bennett. Thought you could disappear forever?
My throat tightens. I grip the phone so hard my knuckles ache. You have the wrong number, I say, my voice too shaky to be convincing. A low chuckle slithers through the speaker, sending a chill down my spine.
Don't play dumb, sweetheart. We both know I don't forget a debt, and neither should you.
My pulse hammers in my ears. The walls of my small bedroom in the Calloway mansion feel like they're closing in. I don't owe you anything, I whisper, but even I don't believe it.
See, that's where you're wrong.
His voice darkens, smooth and threatening, like a blade pressed against my skin.
You owe me, Sophie, and it's time to pay up.
I swallow hard. I don't have anything.
You have him.
My breath catches. Liam. Panic explodes in my chest, a wildfire consuming every rational thought. You stay the hell away from that boy, I hiss, my entire body trembling. Another laugh, amused.
Relax. I don't hurt kids. But you owe me, and if you think you can hide behind that rich bastard you work for, think again. Calloway won't want you once he knows who you really are.
Terror grips me. I thought I buried this part of my life. I thought I was safe. But the past doesn't stay buried. It claws its way back when you least expect it. And now I have everything to lose.
I should have known. From the moment she walked into my home, I should have seen it. The lies, the deception, the past she tried so desperately to hide. But I didn't. Instead, I let my guard down. Let her get close to my son, close to me. And now, as I stand in my office, gripping the paper in my hand so tightly it crumples, all I can feel is rage. A file sits on my desk, thick, heavy, filled with pages I never should have had to read. A past I never should have had to uncover like this. Fraud, unpaid debts, connections to men who should be rotting in a prison cell. Sophie Bennett is not the woman I thought she was. She lied to me, lied to Liam. The sound of the door opening makes me look up. And there she is, standing in the doorway, her eyes wide, uncertain. But she knows. She knows.
Dominic?
Her voice is careful, like she's afraid of what she'll find in my expression. Good. She should be afraid. I toss the file onto the desk between us. Tell me it's not true. She flinches, her gaze flickering to the damning evidence in front of her.
Dominic, I can explain.
Explain? The word snaps from my mouth like a whip. What exactly do you think you can explain, Sophie? That you've been lying since the day you walked through my door? That you hid your past, your debts, your connections too? My jaw locks. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Her throat moves as she swallows, and I see it, the panic, the guilt, but no denial. No damn denial.
I never meant to lie to you. I needed this job. I needed a fresh start.
She says, her voice breaking. A bitter laugh rumbles from my chest. A fresh start? You thought working in my home, being near my son, was the way to fix your mess. Her lips part, but no words come out. Because there's nothing she can say that will undo this. Nothing that will take back the betrayal that's burning through me like acid. I take a slow step back. A deliberate distance. I want you gone. Sophie inhales sharply, like the words physically hit her.
Dominic.
Now. She blinks rapidly, as if she can't believe this is happening. As if she expected something else from me. And for a moment, a fleeting, pathetic moment, I almost hate myself for the way her face crumbles. But then I remember Liam. I remember how much he trusts her. How much I trusted her. And that anger flares back, hot and undeniable. I don't want you near my son, I say, voice like steel. Not now. Not ever. A choked sound escapes her lips, but I don't waver. I can't. I spent years building walls to keep people out. And Sophie? She just proved why they should have never come down in the first place.
The silence is the worst part. When I close my eyes at night, I hear it, the absence. The missing laughter, the small footsteps that used to follow me down the halls, the tiny voice calling my name with unshaken trust. Liam, I had to leave. I didn't have a choice, but God, it hurts. The apartment I returned to is smaller than I remember, colder. I sit by the window, staring out at the city lights, but all I can think about is that mansion, the home I was in just days ago. The home where a little boy wrapped his arms around me and told me he felt safe. Where a man with ice in his veins started to thaw, just a little. Dominic. I shake my head. No. I can't let myself think about him. Not after the way he looked at me. Not after the way his words cut straight through me. sharp and merciless.
I don't want you near my son. Not now. Not ever.
A lump rises in my throat, but I shove it down. I knew this would happen. I knew better than to believe, even for a second, that I could belong in his world. And yet, I let myself hope. A single tear slips down my cheek, but I wipe it away quickly. I have to move on. I have to find a new job, rebuild my life. But then, my phone buzzes. My heart jumps before my mind can catch up. I reach for it, pulse hammering. For a foolish second, I think, what if it's him? But when I look at the screen, my chest tightens. It's not Dominic. It's a message from an unknown number, and the words make my breath catch.
Sophie, please come back.
Liam.
I tell myself I made the right choice. I say it every morning when I step into my office, drowning in back-to-back meetings, my schedule airtight, just the way I like it. I say it every evening when I walk through the front doors of my house, greeted by pristine silence and order. I say it every night when I lie awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, forcing myself to forget the way she looked at me. Like I shattered something inside her. Like she never expected me to be that cruel. And maybe she was right. I've spent years making sure I never let myself get close to anyone. Love is a weakness. I learned that the hard way. I loved once, and I lost. The night my wife died, something inside me died too. I buried it beneath work, beneath discipline, beneath an unbreakable wall of control. I convinced myself that it was the only way to survive. That if I never let anyone in, I would never have to feel that kind of pain again. And then Sophie came into my life. She wasn't supposed to matter. She was supposed to be temporary, a nanny, an employee, nothing more. But she wasn't. She was sunlight in a house that had been dark for too long. She was laughter in a place that had forgotten the sound of it. She was warmth where I had forced myself to be cold. And I let her in. That night in the kitchen when I kissed her, I forgot every rule I had set for myself. Forgot every reason I had to keep my distance. I only knew that I wanted her. That she was looking at me like she wanted me too. That for the first time in years I felt something more than duty, more than responsibility, something reckless and consuming and dangerous. So I pushed her away. Because if I let myself feel again, I might lose everything. Liam barely speaks to me now. He sits at the dinner table, pushing food around his plate, his little face tight with frustration.
When is Sophie coming back?
He asked me once, his voice small but steady. She's not, I told him. His hands curled into fists. His chair scraped against the floor as he stood abruptly, storming away without another word. I should have called him back. Should have said something to soften the blow. But I didn't. Because deep down, I know I'm a hypocrite. Liam isn't the only one who misses her. I catch myself looking for her without meaning to. In the kitchen, where she used to hum under her breath while making Liam's favorite pancakes. In the hallway where she'd bend down to tie his shoelaces before school. In my office where I replay that kiss over and over, wondering if I had just held on for one more second, would she have changed everything? A muscle in my jaw tightens. It was a mistake. She was a mistake. But if that's true, why the hell do I feel like I'm the one who's lost?
The knock on my door comes late. Too late for anyone to be visiting. I freeze, my heart suddenly hammering against my ribs. No one knows where I am. No one except. I rush to the door and pull it open, half expecting to see Dominic standing there, tall and imposing, his usual scowl in place. But it's not Dominic. It's Liam. His face is blotchy from crying, his small body shivering in the cold night air. His backpack, too big for him, hangs off one shoulder like he grabbed it in a hurry. For a second, I can't breathe. Liam. My voice comes out sharp with panic. Oh my God, what? How did you get here? His lower lip trembles.
I ran away.
My stomach drops. I scan the street behind him, searching for Dominic's car, for any sign that he knows his son is here. But there's nothing, just darkness and the distant hum of the city. I step forward, dropping to my knees in front of Liam, my hands gripping his arms. He's cold, his fingers like ice when he clutches onto my sleeve. Sweetheart, you can't just run away like this, I say, trying to keep my voice calm, even though my mind is racing. Does your dad know where you are? Liam shakes his head, quickly, eyes wide.
I don't care.
He says, stubbornly.
He made you leave. And I don't want to be there without you.
His voice cracks at the end, and something inside me shatters. Oh, Liam. I pull him into a hug, wrapping my arms around his small frame, trying to warm him up. He clings to me tightly, his breathing uneven against my shoulder. I blink rapidly, pushing back the sting of tears. I have to be strong for him. We have to call your dad, I whisper, stroking his hair. He's probably worried sick. Liam stiffens.
No.
I pull back, slightly, meeting his stubborn gaze. Yes, I say firmly. Liam, I know you're upset, but running away isn't the answer. You scared me, and I bet you scared him too. He looks down, his small hands fisting the fabric of my sweater.
I just wanted to see you,
he says, voice barely above a whisper.
I miss you.
I bite my lip, trying to keep my emotions in check. I miss you too, baby. My throat tightens. But you can't do this. You have to go home. His shoulders shake, but he nods. I take a deep breath, reach for my phone, and dial Dominic's number. It doesn't even ring twice before he picks up.
Sophie?
His voice is sharp, laced with something I don't recognize, fear. Panic. I grip the phone tighter. Dominic, I say quickly, glancing at Liam. He's here. He's safe. Silence. Then a rough exhale, like the breath had been ripped from his chest.
I'm coming,
he says, and then the line goes dead. I pull Liam back into my arms, holding him close, preparing myself for the storm that's about to walk through my door. Because if Dominic Calloway was cold before, I have no doubt that tonight I'll be facing him at his most unforgiving.
She came to find me. I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't ready for it. But here she is standing in my office, a storm in her eyes. And I know, this time I won't be able to shut her out. That night when I found Liam in her apartment, I was too blinded by rage to listen. I was too focused on getting my son back to care about her explanations. I barely spoke to her. Didn't give her a chance to defend herself. Because in my mind, she had already crossed the line. Now, with the weight of everything I've learned, I wonder if I made a mistake.
I have nothing to hide,
she says, her voice steady, though I see her fingers trembling.
I have nothing to hide.
She swallows hard, her throat working around the words.
You never even gave me a chance to explain.
She's right. I was so quick to believe the worst, so fast to turn my back on her. Say it, I demand now, stepping closer. Say whatever it is you need to say. She lifts her chin.
I owe money,
she says simply, and my gut tightens.
It started with medical bills. My mom was sick, and I did everything I could to take care of her. I worked extra shifts, took side jobs, but it was never enough. So I borrowed, and when she passed, I was left with nothing but debt.
Her voice is quiet, but her words hit like a wrecking ball.
I was drowning, Dominic, and the people I borrowed from...
She lets out a bitter laugh.
They weren't exactly the kind you just walk away from.
I feel my hands curl into fists. How had I not known this? How had I not even thought to ask? She exhales shakily, arms wrapping around herself.
So yes, I took jobs I didn't want. I worked in places I hated, and I did what I had to do to survive.
She lifts her eyes to mine, raw and unflinching.
But I never lied to you.
She continues, softer now.
I just never thought you'd care enough to ask.
That lands like a punch to the ribs.
I was terrified when I met you, because for the first time in years I had something good, something safe. I didn't want my past to take that away from me.
That lands like a punch to the ribs.
For once.
She whispers. I searching mine.
Just tell me the truth. Do you really think I'm that person? Do you really believe I would hurt you? Hurt Liam?
I don't. God help me. I don't. But admitting that means admitting I was wrong. That I let my own fears dictate my judgment. Sophie shakes her head like she can see the war happening inside me.
I get it now. It's not just about me. It never was.
She says, voice hollow. I stiffen.
You're afraid.
She accuses, her eyes shining.
Afraid to let someone in again. Afraid to love.
My jaw clenches, the words digging into me like glass shards.
This was never about my past. This was always about yours.
She finishes, voice breaking. Silence. It stretches between us, heavy and suffocating. And for the first time, I don't know what to say. Because she's right. I shouldn't be here. The rain is relentless, soaking through my shirt, chilling me to the bone. But I don't care. Because she's walking away and I can't let her. Not this time. Sophie. She doesn't stop. I take a step forward, my dress shoes splashing through puddles, my heart pounding. Sophie, damn it, stop. She halts, shoulders stiff, hands clenched at her sides. Slowly, she turns. Her face is wet, rain, maybe tears, but her eyes blaze with something that nearly knocks the air from my lungs.
What do you want, Dominic?
Her voice wavers, but her chin lifts defiantly. I take another step, closer now, the downpour blurring the world around us. I was wrong. The words feel foreign, rough. I was wrong about everything. She laughs, sharp and disbelieving.
Yeah? You'll have to be more specific.
I was wrong to judge you, I admit. Wrong to push you away. Wrong to think I could ever let you go. Her breath hitches, but she doesn't move. I told myself it was about trust. About Liam. About my rules. My jaw tightens. But it wasn't. I run a hand through my drenched hair, exhaling hard. It was about me. Lightning flashes in the distance, illuminating the anguish on her face. I told myself I had nothing left to give. That my heart died with my wife. That I was better off alone. Sophie's lower lip trembles and something inside me cracks. But then you walked into my life, I confess, stepping closer. And you ruined everything. She blinks, startled. You made me feel again, I say, my voice low, aching. You made me want. A shaky breath escapes her lips. You made me see what I was missing. What Liam was missing. My throat tightens. And it scared the hell out of me. Thunder rumbles, a deep, rolling sound, but the only thing I hear is the hammering of my own pulse. I love you, Sophie. The words fall between us, unshakable. Unstoppable. She stares at me, her breath shallow, eyes wide with disbelief. I love you, I repeat, softer now. And I'm done pretending I don't. The rain pounds harder, but I don't move. I can't. Not until I know if she'll walk away. Or if she'll choose me.
I don't know who moves first. 1 second, we're standing in the rain, his confession hanging between us like something fragile, something sacred. And then I'm in his arms. His hands frame my face, fingers threading through my soaked hair as if he's afraid I'll disappear, as if he can't bear the thought of losing me again. And then he kisses me. There's no hesitation this time, no restraint. It's not like the first time in the kitchen, the stolen, forbidden moment that ended in heartbreak. This kiss is something else entirely. It's desperate and deep. His lips moving against mine with the kind of certainty that leaves no room for doubt. It's a promise. Lightning flashes behind my closed eyes, thunder roaring through the sky. But the only storm I feel is the one he's igniting inside me. I press closer, my fingers clutching the soaked fabric of his dress shirt, my heart pounding so fast I can barely breathe. And he doesn't hold back. Dominic Calloway, the man who built walls so high no one could climb them, kisses me like a man who has finally torn them down, like a man who has nothing left to fear. His lips part from mine, just enough for him to whisper against them, his breath warm despite the rain.
Sophie.
My name isn't a question. It isn't a plea. It's something else. Something that sounds an awful lot like home. I smile against his lips, my fingers tracing the sharp line of his jaw, the rain still pouring around us. "I'm here," I whisper. His forehead rests against mine, his chest rising and falling with uneven breaths.
Stay.
He murmurs. I pull back, just enough to look at him, my hands resting over his heart. Always. And then I kiss him again, because this time, there's nothing stopping us.
The house feels different. It's the same structure, same walls, same towering ceilings, same meticulous order I once believed made it feel like home. But now there's laughter in the hallways. Tiny socks that don't belong to me litter the living room. A pink coffee mug, Sophie's, sits beside mine on the kitchen counter, a quiet testament to the life we've built. I don't remember the exact moment everything changed. Maybe it was the first time she made Liam laugh, his small face lighting up in a way I hadn't seen in years. Maybe it was when she kissed me in the rain, her hands on my face, her lips whispering a promise against mine. Or maybe, deep down, I knew it from the moment she walked into my life.
Dad.
Liam's voice snaps me out of my thoughts. I barely have a second to react before he barrels into me, arms wrapping around my waist with the force of a 6-year-old missile. I crouch down, ruffling his hair. "What's this for?" He grins up at me.
Mom said dinner's ready.
Mom? The word sends something warm through my chest. It's new. Only a few weeks ago, Sophie was still just Sophie. But Liam had decided for us, declaring it one night with the same certainty that I've come to expect from my son. And Sophie? She just smiled, her eyes soft as she pulled him into her arms. She belongs here. Liam tugs my hand and I let him pull me into the dining room, where Sophie stands at the table, lighting a candle in the center. She glances up at me and for a second, everything else fades. She smiles. I cross the room in 3 steps, my hand finding the small of her back as I lean in, pressing a kiss to her temple. She tilts her head, the flickering candlelight reflecting in her green eyes.
Everything okay?
She murmurs. I glance at Liam, who's already climbing onto his chair, excitement practically vibrating from him. I look at the table, the meal Sophie prepared, the warm glow of the candlelight, the feeling of something whole, something unshakable settling into place. And then I look back at her. At the woman who tore down every wall I ever built, who reminded me what it means to love, to risk, to live. Yeah? I say, my fingers brushing against hers. For the first time in a long time, I know it's true. Everything is okay. More than okay. It's home.
The air smells like rain. Not the kind that brings storms or restless nights, but the soft, lingering scent of a summer drizzle. The kind that feels like a quiet promise. I stand by the floor-to-ceiling window of our home, my fingers wrapped around a warm cup of tea, watching the last droplets slide down the glass. The world outside is calm, but inside me, there's a steady hum of disbelief. 1 year since I left this house in tears, convinced I'd lost everything. Since I thought Dominic would never look at me without resentment in his eyes. Since I thought my past would always own me. But I was wrong. Liam's laughter fills the room, soft and content as he flips through a book on the couch. His hair is longer now, constantly falling into his eyes, and his face has lost some of the sadness it carried when I first met him. Dominic sits beside him, one arm draped over the back of the couch, his own book forgotten in his hands. He's watching Liam, not in the distant way he used to, but with something softer, something real. The Dominic I met a year ago would have kept his distance, would have convinced himself that caring, truly caring, was a risk he couldn't afford. But this Dominic, this is the man who let his walls fall, the man who fought for me, the man who made me his in every way that matters. And soon we'll have something more. I lower my hand to my stomach, resting it gently against the barely there curve. It's still too early for anyone to notice, but I feel it. I know. Liam will have a sibling. Dominic will have another child to love. And I will have a family. A real, unshakable family. My eyes flicker to the past sometimes, the shadows of what once held me captive, the man who threatened to pull me back into a life I fought so hard to escape. But he's gone now, locked away where he belongs. And I am here, truly here. No more fear, no more running. Just this moment, this home, this love. A warm hand covers mine, pulling me from my thoughts. Dominic. His gaze is steady, piercing, the way it always is when he sees right through me.
You're thinking too much.
He murmurs. I smile, tilting my head up to meet his eyes. Maybe. His fingers tighten around mine, his expression shifting, serious, intense in a way that sends my heart racing. Then, slowly, he lowers himself to one knee. My breath catches.
I've spent years convincing myself that love was something I could live without.
He says, voice low, steady. He exhales, his thumb brushing over my knuckles.
I was wrong. I don't want to live without you, Sophie. Not now. Not ever.
Tears blur my vision as he pulls a small velvet box from his pocket, flipping it open to reveal the most breathtaking ring I've ever seen.
Marry me?
The world outside is quiet, the rain a gentle hum against the windows. But inside my heart is pounding, because this moment, this man, this love, it was always meant to be mine.